On this short video, I want to discuss the last two Parshiot in the book of Bamidbar, Matot and Masei. And we almost always read these two Parshiot together. It's only once in many, many years that these are read separately. Of course, the whole idea of certain Parshiot that are sometimes read together, sometimes separately, has to do with our desire to read specific Parshiot before or at a particular time, before a particular day, for instance. So Parshat Dvarim is always read before Tisha B'Av, before the 9th of Av. And in a certain sense, its Torah and Haftorah hint to the 9th of Av also. The word Eicha, of course, is the beginning of the book that we read on Tisha B'Av. And there is the same word in Parshat Dvarim, Eicha es alivadi. And it's in a lot of synagogues, especially by Ashkenazim, this verse is read with a particular tone to remind us of Eicha. So in order for Dvarim to be read before Tisha B'Av, we have to sometimes read Matot and Masei separately, and most of the time they're read together. And the Haftorah of Tisha B'Av also has the word Eicha. The Parshiot Matot and Masei have a couple of interesting halachot in them, which is not very common. The book of Bamidbar is not really full of halacha. Most of the chapters didn't have any applicable halachas to us today. And these are actually not only laws, practical laws that are learned from these Parshiot, but they're laws that actually apply to us today. Some laws in the Torah, of course, may be applicable only in the times of the temple or only in the land of Israel, but these are laws that apply to everybody, and in certain times of our lives we apply these laws. Of course, the beginning of Matot talks about the oaths and vows, and in particular the way to annul certain vows or oaths. It talks about something that Chazal called Hafarat Nidarim, when a father can annul his daughter's oaths, or a husband, in some cases, his wife's oaths. There is a different Hatarat Nidarim, where anybody's oaths, men or women, anybody can get their oaths annulled, and that is not openly written in the Torah, but it's a tradition, it's hinted in certain places in the Torah, that the oaths can be annulled. And another parsha in another paragraph that deals with the practical halacha for us today has to do with immersing in the mikvah, in a natural body of water. One could immerse maybe in a lake or in a sea. The new vessels, or old vessels that were kosher, that are bought from non-Jews. That is, after the war of Midian, the Jewish people had some trophies, and it included various metal vessels. So Chazal say the Mei Nida, the water of Nida, that are mentioned in these verses, means that the vessels, whether they were not kosher and they were purified, purged with fire or through boiling or whatever the methods are. There are all kinds of laws about how to kosher, how to purify the vessels that absorbed maybe some taste of non-kosher substances. By the way, today's metals, in particular very strong metals like steel, it's not clear at all that their absorption of non-kosher substances requires a full koshering. There are a lot of articles in today's day and age by certain Orthodox Jewish scientists that did research and figured that the absorption of the food or any kind of taste in strong metals, in steel type of metals, in today's what is used for the majority of pots and pans today, it may be negligible. And it's not clear at all that it needs koshering. But traditionally, Orthodox Jews still kosher the vessels. If we bought an old vessel from somebody who does not observe kashrut, or if we accidentally made our vessel non-kosher. This can happen, for instance, if milk was cooked in a meat pot, or vice versa. So traditionally, koshering is done. And besides koshering, when you buy a vessel from non-Jews, you also have to immerse it. Even if it's a new vessel, because how is it better if it's new versus if it was old and it was koshered first? At any rate, once it's koshered, it's like new. It doesn't have any non-kosher substance inside, but it still has to be immersed in a mikvah. However, while the simple understanding of what Chazal say, it's in the tractate of Avodah Zarah at the very end, where all of this is discussed. While the simple understanding seems to be that this is how they understand the verses in our Parsha, there are some commentators that understood that our Parsha does not actually openly discuss any immersion of vessels. Mei nida may mean sprinkling of vessels with the water, with the ashes of red cow to make them spiritually not tameh, not unclean, which today doesn't apply at all. Today we're all unclean and our vessels are, so those laws wouldn't apply today. Of course, we don't have ashes of red cow, so it's assumed that any of us that were ever in contact with dead, and all of our vessels that were ever in contact with dead, they're all unclean already and they cannot be purified. So those laws don't apply to us today. And will apply again if we're zoche to see the temple and we'll need, let's say, to eat, for instance, Korban Pesach on Pesach night. For that, we would need vessels that are totally clean from ritual impurity. But as today we don't have any of that, so it would seem that the verses in our Parsha don't have practical application today. So what about the the words of our sages that we have to immerse new vessels? Maybe it's a rabbinical law that they found an asmachta for. Asmachta, there are different opinions what exactly it means, but the Talmud a lot of times says that the verses are not really, in this particular case or particular law, the Talmud may say that the verses are not really, their meaning is not really that law. Rather, it's only asmachta, meaning it's a rabbinical law that is somewhat hinted maybe by these words of the Torah, or maybe what it means is the sages basically use the words of the Torah to find something to rely on for a rabbinical law. But it's not really a biblical law at all. And that seems to be the understanding of Rambam, the great Maimonides. He seems to hold that the immersing of the new vessels is all a rabbinical law, meaning that the verses in our Parsha are talking about something else. They're talking about ritual purity and the ashes of red cow. Mei nida here, and the word nida here is not a woman who immerses in a mikvah, nida that purifies herself. Rather, nida here means from the root of sprinkling something. It's the water of red cow's ashes that needs to be sprinkled on the vessels that they brought from after the war of Midian, and all because of ritual purity. And that doesn't apply to us. But the asmachta, when the sages relied on these verses to also institute that new vessels bought from non-Jew or old vessels that were koshered need to be also immersed in a mikvah. At any rate, we learn that the sages also made a rabbinical law that glass vessels have to be immersed. So metal vessels have to be immersed possibly by biblical law, possibly as an asmachta, and glass vessels are definitely a purely rabbinical law. The glass vessels that are bought from a firm, let's say, that doesn't belong to Jews, or from a store that doesn't belong to Jews, would need to be immersed. And there's a bracha that's made. It doesn't matter if it's biblical or rabbinical. The bracha is always made, whether it's you're immersing a glass vessel or a metal vessel. There are all kinds of disputes about certain other vessels, what else needs to be immersed. In particular, china that has a very thin layer of glass. Most of our china, it's made, of course, from clay, and clay does not need immersion. But if you bought china that has a thin layer of glass, does that require immersion? A lot of people immerse it without a brocha. And there are a lot of other laws with regards to what needs or does not need to be immersed. It only applies, by the way, to vessels that are used for food. So let's say a can opener, even though it's metal, we do not have to immerse it. It's not used neither to cook, nor to store food, nor to eat from. It's just opening cans. And Of course, there are a lot more laws, and on this short video I didn't want to go into all the halachot of immersion of the vessels. There are whole books written on it, but I just wanted to bring your attention that in this particular parsha we do find at least one law, whether it's rabbinical or biblical, that we observe today. If it's rabbinical, it's at least hinted maybe as an asmachta in our verses of the Torah. And if you like this video, please press like and please subscribe to our channel.